It is 11 a.m. on the dot on the Pacific Coast here. So let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I hope you, for those of you that have been logged in for a few minutes, you got a little bit of entertainment. So I hope that was a joyful part of your day. But we are ready to start our second to last day of CONNEXT, and I cannot believe it. I can't believe we are here after 5 weeks. So thank you all so much for joining us. Before I start introductions, I'd like to throw a question out to all of you that are listening. I know there are a lot of emotions, both negative and positive, swirling around as dental offices are preparing to reopen. And today I'd like to focus on the positives, and I would love to hear from all of you. So what is the one thing you're most excited about having back as your practice reopens in the next 2 to 4 weeks? What is the one thing that you've missed the most? So think about that. Drop those questions in the Q&A box. And while you guys are doing that, we're going to move forward with introductions. So my name is Kendall Perry. I'm going to be your host today. We are scheduled for 60 minutes of content. We're going to have about 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. You'll have an opportunity to ask our presenters questions at the end, so please don't be shy. The question box is going to be here throughout the presentation, so you can type your questions in anytime. Also, if you have any technical issues, we are running, obviously, 2 videos today, so we've got a little extra layer of complex technology going on. So if there are any technology issues that you have, we have Lacey and Taylor that are working in the background to make sure that you all have a great experience. So please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you guys. The session is being recorded today. We'll send it later with the CE info. We're also going to post the recording in the Facebook group and on our CONNEXT webpage, where you can find all of our past recordings as well as the handout resources that we've made available. Okay, with that out of the way, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our presenters today and my dear friends, hygienist Josey Sewell and Dr. Eric Roman. Dr. Roman serves the dental industry as an experienced DSO executive, thought leader, and coach. He is also a frequent contributor as a faculty member for the DEO, Dentist Entrepreneur Organization. He was most recently the CEO and co-founder of Carolina's Dentist, a $40 million DSO, which he helped grow from the ground up. The company recipe focused on technology-advanced practices that deliver complex care to patients, all while maintaining an unmatched company culture and operating platform, which when you really think about that, you let that soak in. That's the dream right there. Josey is the VP of Education for Dental Intelligence. She brings with her leadership and operational expertise that she developed as the COO leading Carolina's Dentist. She is quite the data nerd, and her love of analytics comes from the belief that the greatest disparity in the world today is the inability to harness human energy due to outdated management practices. She is a fierce advocate for the growth and development of people and is known for her ability to successfully integrate culture and team health with data and sound operational systems. So on a personal note, besides the resumes these two have, they also have some of the best energy that you will find anywhere, and together they are such a dynamic duo. I've had the privilege of working with both of them in different capacities, and I have to say you guys are incredibly special to me. Your talent and your drive is unmatched, and you have done so many great things for the world of dentistry. So I know you both have a lot on your plates right now. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today and share your message. I think our attendees are in for a real treat. Now, before we jump in, and I know I'm so sorry, that's like the biggest tease ever, we have another guest on the line. We also have Carrie Free's very own, Dr. Cooch, is joining the conversation again. So Dr. Cooch, would you like to officially hand it off to our friends?
Yes, I would, and I'm at a loss for words for these two. They are so energetic and so accomplished and just amazing people. And I am so excited that you guys are doing this today, and I'm so looking forward to your presentation. And I just want to give you a big heartfelt thanks for taking your time to do this. And I love being able to see your smiles too. So everybody, well, please welcome them to the CONNEXT family.
There's the applause. Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much.
Is there a CONNECT dance that we're supposed to do? Is there an official dance?
No,
I'm
I think
trying
maybe
it
we
right
need to
now.
adjust the moves just a little bit.
That's it. Yep, that's what we all sat around and made up together. That was it right there.
Excellent. I feel great.
Thank you guys
Nailed it.
so much for having us. We are super excited about this.
Yeah, and just to clarify how everything works today, I'm just window decoration for Josey. Josey's always the real show. That's the way it's been in my life for all the years that we've worked together, and I can't help but echo. Kendall is one of the dearest shared relationships Josey and I have ever had. We talk about Kendall literally on a weekly basis, and so yeah, and now we're in a mutual admiration society right now, and so it works out great. That's just the way this is supposed to be. Maybe we could just spend the time talking about how much we love each other.
People would really like that. But you know, as I was yes,
that would
I
be
was
great.
getting ready
It's
this
super
morning,
high value.
I was actually thinking about, you know, when Kendall and I worked together before, and the fact that this girl willingly gave up days of her time to drive me across the country to work for you. So fun.
Yeah, intriguing. Yep, she's the glue. She's the glue
She
that
is,
binds
right?
us together. Go figure.
Oh,
Well, Josey, what are we going to talk
we are
about
going
today?
to talk about getting more out of what you want out of your business. And we had planned to talk a little bit about the new normal in dentistry. Eric and I spent some time together over the last couple of months when everything went down with COVID. You know, people were reaching out to him to get some advice. People were reaching out to me, and we took the opportunity to record a free course. It's called The New Normal in Dentistry. And we were going to talk a little bit about that today, but then Kendall said part of what the audience was looking for was how to get more out of the business, how to get more out of, you know, your dental office, running it as a business. And you and I know a little bit about that. And so we switched up our topic just a little bit. And today we're going to talk about how to get more out of your business because we know a little bit about that.
You know what, Josey? Maybe another way to say it is that we've screwed up an awful lot over the years, right? Like that's really the story of it. You know, experience is oftentimes dictated by how many mistakes you make and simply how you respond to them. And I can absolutely assure you, I've made a lot of mistakes. You think about just in terms of our collective expertise. I would love for you to talk a little bit about specifically what some of your roles have been, but for me and my roles, functionally in building dental groups. Now, I think when we look back now, my dental groups and derivative groups that have spawned off of mine have done well over like 220 million over the past decade in dental care, right? And that's a lot of impact to be able to have. And I've had the pleasure of training well over 100 dentists now, and I think collectively we've had well over 1,000 employees, which you could say is a good thing, or you could say it's a bad thing because there's like a revolving door of people coming in and going out at some point or another, right? So that's a lot of people to touch, patient-wise and team member-wise, through the journey. Josey, tell a little bit about specifically what you did in all that as a business operations leader.
You know, Eric and I worked together previously at Carolina's Dentist that Kendall mentioned in our intro, and it was a group that Eric was the founder of, and it grew from 0 to 40 million in revenue in about 6 years. With, at that point, we had 7 practices. They were all, you know, scratch start de novos. We had not done any acquisitions, you know, just in the right before we left. They started doing that as they joined another group. But I had the opportunity to sit in several different seats on that executive team. So I oversaw hygiene for a little bit. I was the director of people for a little bit, which is HR. And I always, you know, made a joke about it being fake HR. But, you know, my passion really has been helping people grow and develop. And then I was the director of operations. And my last little bit there was the chief operating officer, or the integrator, which is a term that we use in this system that we're going to talk about today. And part of what really helped us grow the business and what helped keep us on track is he's a dentist and I'm a hygienist. And, you know, we had other people that we grew up through the organization to help it grow so quickly, was something called Entrepreneurial Operating System. And that's really was super helpful for us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how we applied that to dentistry.
Yeah, and you know, I'll start just by touching a little bit. Kind of funny that we had all these computer issues today, And, functionally, when we talk about operating systems really serve as the base for everything that happens inside of our computer. And I think that everybody on the call really has they have an understanding or an awareness of the operating system, whether it's Mac OS or whether it's Windows. One thing that's also really clear is that the two don't play really well together, right? And, you actually can't run Mac software directly on a Windows computer and vice versa. And an operating system inside your company is really no different. There's a language that has to occur that really serves as a glue and a platform to pull together all the different disciplines of what we're responsible for as leaders inside our businesses, right? And since, and I want to talk about this as a business today, but we also understand that this is healthcare. And, we actually have such a blessing in the fact that the more that we do, the more that we generate from a business perspective, the greater our impact in a healthcare perspective, right? And you think about it, like, that's a great business to be in. There's other businesses that don't operate that way. Actually, dental insurance companies are the exact opposite. The less dentistry that gets generated, the greater their profitability as an insurance company, right? And so we're in this really cool place where it's okay, and I just want to create a safe space for us to say, it's okay to say that we want to have thriving businesses, because if you have no margin, like no profitability in your business, well, functionally, you have no mission that you can fulfill for your people. So this operating system really serves as the glue to connect how you handle your people, how you manage your dental operations, how you connect it to the financial portion of your practice, and maybe even the marketing or other disciplines you may have. Is that a good explanation, like as a basis for how
Yes,
an operating
absolutely.
system
Thank you
works
for
here,
that.
Joe?
So let's talk a little bit. We'll start to jump in here. So we're
Yeah.
going to talk entrepreneurial operating system. So there are two ways to implement this. You can either, buy the books, Traction is one, or Get a Grip is one. Another way is to use a professional implementer, which is somebody that you meet with, somebody who knows the system and walks you through it. We used a professional implementer for years, and we found it really, really beneficial. I've also done some implementation with some dental groups and dental offices. So just know that we're going to talk overview of the system today, and I'm going to, give you a little peek into that. You can obviously take this information and utilize it. I wanted to give some very practical pieces today of this system that you can take and start applying to your business tomorrow, whether that is you are a dentist and an owner and you have a practice, whether you're a DSO owner, or even if it's, just within your life. I think some of the things that we're talking about, or you're a team member, this is all really, really beneficial. So Entrepreneurial Operating System, it was created by somebody named Gino Wickman, and he's an entrepreneur. He grew up, watching his dad with the family business. He went and did a few things before he came and took over the family business. He grew it like crazy. And ended up then selling the business. He got really involved with like entrepreneurial organizations and realized he had a knack for helping people grow their business. And so no matter what business you're in, whether that is dentistry or it's retail or whatever it is, many businesses struggle with the same 136 problems or more, however many more. But all of those can fit into 6 core components, or 6 key components. And so that's what you see in front of you today. And I'm going to touch a little bit on what those are, and then we're really only going to dive into 3 really practical tools so that you can take this information and use it. So first things first, it's about getting really, really clear with your vision. It's about knowing exactly who we are and where we're going, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what that means. But once you have a clear vision, the next thing is trying to decide who are the right people to help you accomplish that vision. So who are the right people, and getting them in the right seats. Once we are clear with the vision, have the right people in the right seats, the next thing is giving those team members great things to do. And again, putting them in an environment where they know exactly what's expected of them. And we do that through the data component by using Scorecard and measurables. So once your vision is clear, you have the right people and they know exactly what they're meant to do. Sometimes those impurities rise to the top, right? Or those things that we struggle with in the business rise to the top. We simply call those issues. So there's a process on how to work through issues. What I loved about us utilizing this process is whether it was having to have a really difficult conversation with a partner dentist or a hurricane was threatening our business, it was just an issue to be solved, and we have a very structured process how to work through those things. Often what we find is that many of those issues, we used to blame it all on people, but the fact is it was process, right? Many of us have a process issue. And so being able to simplify those things, document them, and have it where people are actually following those processes and you're measuring the adoption of that. And then on the bottom here is just traction. And so living in a 90-day world where we as human beings get really, really distracted. And as we live in a 90-day world and we really prioritize the few things that need to get done in the next 90 days, following those through to completion. So if you've ever been somebody who loves to start 10 projects, but you never get any of them done, this helps solve that problem. And also what your meeting pulse is. So how often are you meeting with your team? What is the agenda? Like just making really, really efficient meetings. So those are really the 6 key components. And we could probably take a minute and list everything that you're struggling with in your business. And I promise it will fall into one of these 6 components. So the goal is to get you strong in each of these components. And there's never an expectation that you get to 100%, but even 80% strong. And as you do that, you end up getting more out of what your business that you really, really want. So within each of these are additional really practical tools to help simplify and get you there.
You know, Josey, I'll add a little bit about like the functional experience for me as a dentist and as a leader. And when I look back, I think of how complex what we're really asked to do is. We're living this life where, first of all, and no offense to the other dentists, but by nature, like we're engineers and we're super, retentive and detail oriented, and we're dealing with like a life where fractions of a millimeter matter in everything that we do. We have our heads down in people's faces and, trying to do these complex procedures. And yet at the same time, and you think about what part of our brains and our psyches that engages. At the same time, we're trying to manage every part of a business, that if the business doesn't exist, we can't deliver our skills as, as clinicians, whether we're dentists or hygienists. And so we have to use this other portion of our brain to go through all these different steps. And I'll admit, it didn't take long before I was super overwhelmed with all those things. And so what did I do? I did what pretty much everybody else does. We're resourceful. So we read books and we find information and we go through all this stuff. But one of the hardest parts is how do you take this great information that you find in a book and then turn it into actually something that's happening in your business? And my team members over the years, like they started to get whiplash because it was like every time I picked up a new book or I came back to the office with another, hey, here's a great idea to fix like what was so messed up last week. And so everything in the ship turns and starts looking over this way. And then that goes for like 2 weeks. And then I read another book and everything in the ship goes over that way. Right. And so our teams almost just get beat up, and it almost gets to a point where they just stop listening to it, and they're like, oh crap, what's he thinking about this week? Like, oh, well, let's wait till this storm blows over. What I loved when I encountered the entrepreneurial operating system is it actually took the best of the best from the greatest sources and books that ever existed, and it boils them down to their core essentials of simplicity. In other words, Josey, if you looked on the pie chart, there's only 10 things. How amazing is it to know that you can solve absolutely everything inside your practice just by focusing on 10 items? And so that simplicity really spoke to a necessity inside my life. So the results really are as good as they sounded. It gave us a language and a simplicity to deliver the outcomes we've always dreamt of.
No.
So,
and
Josey, back to you.
As you were talking, I was thinking about so many people have come to us, whether they're groups or single practice owners or leaders, and have said, you know what, like, how can I make this work? How am I going to guarantee that I get that? And there was so much of like, you submitted to the process, right? And you were doubtful at first. You were the one that was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But you submitted to the process and you followed the rules of the
Yeah.
process, which actually, for somebody like yourself, who we would refer to as like a visionary with big ideas and passion and excitement, it actually didn't restrict you, but it really allowed you to be even more of a visionary. We were just very methodical and prioritized how best to utilize that. So, but it was you really submitting to that process. I think that, helped make it work. So I want to talk a little. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I guess I am submissive. I'll submit. I do what you tell me to do, Josie. But the reality is that each of us inside of our companies, we have certain things we want to do. And what's so frustrating is when we aren't getting the outcomes, right? That traction that we really want to have the tires actually connect with the road, right? What it feels like for so many of us is our tires are literally just spinning in place and smoke's coming up and we aren't getting anywhere. I will submit any day to something that helps me get there, and that's what this was.
So, when a lot of people hear, oh, like you're talking about vision, okay, fine. Like, do I really, need to do this, or how big of a deal is it? When we say vision, we're actually talking about much more than what you typically might call a vision or a mission statement. So, likely if you've had any other type of coaching or consultant, or you've been reading books like Eric talked about, you might have a nice little mission statement that's very patient focused that is on your wall. And that is, when we talk about your vision being clear, it's actually couldn't be further from the truth. So vision in this case, one of the things that you go through is to answer what are referred to as the 8 questions. And so we take all of those ideas and what is inside that big, beautiful brain of the entrepreneur, and we distill it down to a business plan that is 2 pages front and back. And on the first page, it's the vision page. So that's things like your core values. And so again, what I loved about this is not, the owner or even a leadership team of a group sitting down and picking up some pretty flowery words and calling them core values. There's actually a discovery process to determine what are the core values in your people. They actually have to already be there. And then what are the behaviors that we want to help just encourage and emphasize? I've seen so many practices take and they write out their core values, but it's like clinical excellence or something like that. This is not patient facing what we're telling your patients. This is what are the characteristics of the people that you want to hire that are going to differentiate them. If you have 50 applicants, what are the those characteristics you're looking for that differentiate those people to make them your cultural fit? And you get to the point where you hire, you fire, and you reward around your core values. And when you do that, that's how your culture comes to life. So first, before I move on, any quick comments on core values, Eric? We could talk about it for days.
This is a term that, yeah, it's overused in society right now, though, too. We have to be really cautious when we talk about core values, because everybody's heard it and everybody's seen, other values and how they're used. So I think what instantly happens is that we all think, yeah, we know what our values are and that sort. But these core values are actually really different. And there is something magical that occurs when you discover, here's the thing, like no matter what you write and you put on your wall for your values, there's a set of true values that exist inside your company or your practice that have far more power than the ones that you put on the wall, right? And it's little things about which behaviors are tolerated and acknowledged and accepted inside of a practice. It's other things that comes down to like the type of people that you get to surround yourself with. And everybody has experienced those people in their life that are just like 1 + 1 = 4. Those people that when you surround yourself with them, that you're energized by their presence, right? And what the core of that is that there's actually typically a value match between you and those individuals. And so the power of actually getting this process right is about acknowledging who you really are and what really matters in your life. And to give people an example, like when we were inside of our company, Josey, like our values were things like growth. And it's one thing to say, yeah, we want to grow, but it's another thing to actually live a life where everybody that was on our team had to be okay with knowing that no matter how good they did today, we're always seeking opportunities to grow and get better. And yet the reality is there's a lot of practices around the country and around the world where it's okay inside that practice to have tomorrow just meet the goal that we had set today and that we keep a level playing field. So like that growth component was huge. Another value that we had, Josey, is we actually created our own term, but you can feel it. We were funergetic. And there had to be a joy and an excitement and a passion and a joviality to everything that happened inside our practice, because that's who we were. And those were the types of people that we wanted to surround ourselves with. And so when we would go through interviews, like we had to answer the question, does this person seem like they carry funergy? Are they here? And do they have like excitement exuding from their pores? Because if they're not, they might still be a great person, but they're not the right person to be inside our company.
No, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. We could, again, this is one topic that we both love so much that we could continue to talk for so long about how to implement this in your interviewing, how to change, what your conversations with your team members and it really becoming central to that. So no, I love core values. The next piece of this is your core focus, and your core focus is really like your passion, your vision, your drive. Like this is really, if you think about it, the emotional piece of the vision. This is like bigger than us. This is, we all want to be part of something that is, larger than us, that motivates us to get out of bed. This is that really ideological, what are we all working for and what is the impact that we want to make with this business? Research is so interesting now, where people are talking about how, you'll hear people complain about millennials or post-millennials and they don't want to work and they're job hopping and all of these things. And yet research shows us, Gallup research shows us that those generations put a higher emphasis on finding a great job even before having a family and a home. So there's this divide of, what we think they want and what they actually want. And what they want is purpose. What they want is they want their work to matter. They want to contribute to something good. They're all about social good. And so, they are all about connecting themselves to a purpose. And this alone, just this little piece, will help accomplish that. And, it's the thing that you come back to over and over and over again in every conversation.
Yeah. And, Josey, one of the things that you and I talked about for a bit in our new normal dentistry series was that what just occurred and what's occurring at this moment is one of the greatest talent redistributions we've ever seen, as so many employees were furloughed or completely exited from companies, and we had this pause where we're sitting at home. You've all probably read how people are going back and they're reconsidering, what am I really accomplishing in my work? What am I doing? What is the real benefit to the world of my occupation, right? Of my 9 to 5. And what we're going to see is that there's going to be a massive redistribution of people who are seeking to align their core with the focus of a business, right? And that was really what our purpose is in this, is to say, listen, here's who we really are as a business and what we live for. Can this align and give you a reason to wake up and come to work every day and be something that you can feel great about? If not, we shouldn't work together. One of the secrets, and it's not a point of admonition, I'm not saying that this is wrong, but I want to be open and honest. After having consulted in literally hundreds of dental practices, a lot of dental practices, their core focus is functionally to make an income for the dentist. And we have to be open and honest about whether or not that's what our practice is designed for, because a lot of times that can be a barrier for our team members. And this wasn't such a big issue 20 years ago, but now with our change in generational dynamics, we're seeing people that need to have something that they feel like is bigger than simply serving, whoever they work for. So there's a shift that's happening there right now. Josey, talk a little bit about what some core focuses look like in other businesses that you've worked in.
For us, we talked about how we were really creating a group practice that was built around culture that was doctor owned. And that was really important. And what we found in growing a group is it was like our management company had this core focus, but then the core focus for our team members, right, our practices, and that was removing barriers to care. And we had to, if removing barriers to care was our core focus, we had to be true to that. So expanding our hours, being open on Saturdays, we knew it wasn't convenient for our team members, but if our vision was removing barriers, we had to find a way. It was making sure there was financial options for patients, doing everything that we could. And that became our patient experience training. That became everything that guided our decision was, is this removing barriers? And are we providing, are we building a group that, doctors can own and be proud of and that is built on culture? So, it becomes your true north, I would say, is probably the best way to describe it. Another group that I implemented with, they have a really centrally focused hygiene business, and it is all about getting people in, and it's helping them live longer, happier lives. So, they give away a lot of their hygiene services, which some of us kind of cringe when we think about, but they're all about happier, healthier lives through hygiene visits that are actually like convenient to their patients.
Yeah, and when we have that as our focus, what happens over time is that when we prove to our teams and our people that that's actually, like you said, our true north, and that's the rod that we use to make decisions, it actually empowers us to be able to make difficult decisions, right? And so one of the examples you gave was that in Carolina's Dentist, as we were transitioning to moving our practices to extended hours, that was so contentious, like pitchforks and torches coming out, people like storming the castle, wanting to burn it down. How dare you do this? Like, this doesn't work. This doesn't work for my life. And it gave us the ability to say, hey, we want everybody to know, we know that there's a number of employees who this isn't going to work for. But what we want to honor is that our focus has always been to remove barriers. And we've already established that hours of operation is a barrier for many of our patients. We're seeing this in our tests and experiments and other practices. And so this is a decision we have to make just to be in line with our core focus. It doesn't mean that we don't love you and think you're great employees if it's not a fit, but this is how we're staying true to who we are. And all of a sudden, like, the pitchforks and the torches went away, and they're like, oh, we really honor that. And that's what you said you were going to do. It's not like it was a surprise, right? So it gives us a power that that I think a lot of times, as we're trying to please our team members and not necessarily serve our vision, gives us a power and something to lean against that's remarkable.
So if we have this very emotionally driven, like idealistic, this is our passion or vision, the other thing is that, well, how do we know we've accomplished it, right? How can we actually say that we've removed barriers? How can we say we're helping patients live longer, happier lives? And some of that comes into the 10-year target. So it could be anywhere between 8 and 30 years. It's just looking forward. But on the 10-year target, we tried to say, hey, in 10 years, this is where we want the business to be, including like, what does that actually look like in some way that we can measure it? So, for us, when we first tried to do this, it was like a smiles per hour thing, right? So it's like, how many happy people are walking out of our practices every hour? For some people, it's a patient retention number. For some people, it's even just a revenue number, but it's that we have some measurable, something very specific that we can reach towards. And so if that is, we're going to have 50,000 active patients or 50 million active, whatever it is, this one is more of that like very numerical, measurable, so that we know we're getting to that. So the tricky part is trying to figure out, hey, this is our like emotional drive. How are we going to have something specific that we're working towards? So for example, like Dental Intel, one of the things that theirs is like, we want to have 50 million more patients scheduled through our technology by 2025. And so, they're working through and working on the technology, on the training, on whatever to support that goal. So this is more of like a measurable type goal. That's okay?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add there, Josie, but this is also a little bit in the realm of what Jim Collins calls like a big, hairy, audacious goal, a little bit there too. BHAG, where like that thing that you're really reaching for out in the distance that sometimes seems like it's going to be beyond your reach, but yet with a very definable and measurable way to say, hey, we accomplished it, or or we didn't. And it's just amazing how motivational this can also be for our teams. No matter what that 10-year target ends up being, this is something that, again, going in line with that focus is saying, focus is saying what we're living for, and this is saying how we're going to know that we've accomplished it. And so it's a pretty powerful way to live, and it makes it very tangible.
So with the marketing strategy, we won't spend too much time here because I do want us to get to the other thing, but in your marketing strategy, this is about the demographics and the psychographics of the people. This is about what are what's called your 3 uniques, which is in combination of what are the things that you do really, really well in your practice, and what combination of those 3 things makes you different than the dentist that's down the street. And so getting really, really clear about that and defining that target market and what those things are. And I will say that what we did really, really well at Carolina's Dentist is after we defined that, when you first did it, you recognized you were probably marketing to the wrong person, right? And so it was this realization that, oh my gosh, moms are the decision makers often. So we are going after multicultural, multi-generational mothers and family decision makers. So every ad that we put out, every picture, every social media stuff, it was geared around that person. So what happened is we had a crazy amount of success with our marketing, including like a cost per patient acquisition down in like $43, and we did not see Medicaid. So the use of technology and getting really, really clear and doing marketing that we knew we could track, right, was really, really beneficial. So also understanding like part of this is what is your proven process, and your proven process is what can I expect as a patient when I come to you, and can you demonstrate that to me? And so again, it clarifies it, it simplifies it, and gives you something that becomes your filter. And then for us, we also recognized as a group, we really had 2 customers. One, we had patients, right, that we had to market to, but the other thing was we needed to market to dentists and teams. And so we put a lot of effort. Everything we put on the website, we asked ourselves, is a patient going to like this? Is a potential dentist going to like this? Way we set up the office, when you walk in, everything, everybody thinks about marketing to patients, but you have to market to people, and you have to continually market internally, market your company vision, market your purpose to your people to keep them excited.
Well, and what we're seeing right now too, Josie, is with the craziness of our world right now, we've already seen a massive increase in the I guess maybe you call it the competition for marketing space and the messages that are out there. And a lot of times the question came up like, why are we marketing the way that we're marketing? Are we doing it because that's what everybody else is doing? Are we doing it because that's what a company told us would work? And what we found is that when we really built this strategy out the right way, the cool part is like none of our unique qualities were functionally in and of themselves unique. There were other practices around the world that carried some of our uniques, but when you took 3 or 4 of those qualities and you combine them together, that actually is when you made us a unique entity. And when that was our message and it was so focused, and I want you to think about as well, when every person inside of your practice or your company can look at these details and these pieces and know what they are, like when their friends ask them, oh, why should I go see your dentist? And they can rattle off really quickly, like, here's what makes us unique and what makes us special and what we live for. Like, it's amazing. Like, that is where culture begins developing, is when people can all be aligned and carry that with them. live it when they're in the office, and be excited to share
Absolutely.
it when they're not.
Thank you. And so the 3-year picture is really just saying, hey, we're going to start reverse engineering what this 10-year target is. So let's look out 3 years from now. We're going to be specific about what is your revenue target, your profit target, maybe what are some of your measurables. And so, you look through and pick kind of big chunks of like information or data, and then you get to dream a little bit. Oh, we would have this many team members or this many patients, or we would have this. I think at one point we even had a softball league, listed here, or like a leadership retreat. But what this is, we, in every session, we would sit down and close our eyes. And before we were setting our goals, and our implementer, Ben, would read it out to us. And he'd say, is this still who you want to be? And does this excite you? And so then what we do is we start on the back side of this that we're not going to go into today. It is your 1-year plan, your quarterly plan, right? So the next 90 days, and then what's called your issues list. And so everything that we're doing is prioritizing and reverse engineering that big goal. That's what the 3-year picture is. And, I've got an example here. It's, a little small, so you guys might not be able to see it, but we have the vision side of what Carolina's dentist was, right? And then we have our 2019 plan as an example here. And then you've got a quarterly plan. So it's all about just continually coming back to that vision. And are we accomplishing what we said we were? Is that still who we are? Or are we getting distracted and doing things that are not taking us closer to that goal? And so, Eric, we're getting a little close here on time, and we still have a couple things to go through. But, the point is that you accomplished your 10-year goal in like 4 years, right? By utilizing this process. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and it was amazing to see how it happened. It's, it just, everything came together in the process. And the more amazing part, Josey, one of my favorite quotes in life is that strategy is what not to do. And I imagine that if we talked to all the owners and practices that are present right now, one of the things that we found is that when we say, hey, what are all the things that we need to fix and improve? We had like 4 whiteboards. We had 165 items of things that we knew needed to be better inside our company. The interesting thing is that when we actually created this clarity with this process, and we asked ourselves and we said, well, strategy is what not to do. What are the few things that we actually must do to achieve the outcomes and the targets that we've set? We could boil it down to as little as 5 things. That doesn't mean that the other 160 items weren't valuable, but instead of focusing on a million different things at once, we were able to take our resources, our people, and our energy and simplify. And at the same time, when my doctors would come back to me and say something along the lines of, hey, item number 163, it's so frustrating, I can't deal with it, I'm going to die if we don't fix this. I could say, hey, I really appreciate what you're saying, but in order for us to get the goals that you've aligned to, we've established that items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are what we have time to work on right now. So I will get to 163. It's going to be a long way down the road. So number 1, I need you to be okay with that. And number 2, if you can help us and you can accomplish 163 on your own, great. But do I have permission to not worry about it? Because you've agreed these other things matter. And they're like, great point. Keep working on the important stuff. I'll just tuck it in and get back to work.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, let's go back real fast to that circle that we talked about. This was just one, right? This was just in vision. Now it touches all of them a little bit, but that's how valuable this is. But this process, like filling out this first, these first 2 pages, it takes a couple of full day sessions with an implementer to get that from your head and onto paper. And the beauty of that is, people that are working with you, they can see the vision, because so many owners or leaders get so frustrated because they're like, I feel like it's so clear. Why are people not just on board and they're making this happen, right? When in fact, it's not clear. It's not clear to us like it is to you. So with that document that we created, every single team member on their first day, we went through that piece by piece with them so they knew exactly what they were signing up for. And some people, after working for us for a little bit, were like, you know what? I got to be straight. I'm not a core value fit. This isn't really working for me. And so I think you guys are awesome, but I'm actually I gotta go, which was nice when there was that self-selection, because when they're not a core value fit, it struggles. Now, go ahead.
Yeah.
Any last comments on vision?
The key with the vision, Josie, is that it actually is the one part that dictates everything else that you do. Until you really have clarity around it. And one of the things that both of us have found in working with a number of other practices and companies is that like you said, everybody thinks they have clarity on it, but one of the hardest things in the world is when you really have to get it down and really put it on paper and then present it to the people that you love or the people that are on your team and say, hey, is this who we really are? What most people find is that there's actually a greater disconnect. And that's why you invest so much time in making sure that it's clear. It determines how you find your people. It determines who your people are. It determines how you bring them onto your team. It determines how much training you might do. Like, your vision is really the core of everything that gets to happen inside your company, hence the reason it's
Absolutely.
the first thing we work on.
And with that, and if you're doubting, like, I would say go ask leaders in your company or go ask the people that you work with. If you just said, hey, what's the vision of what we're trying to accomplish with this business? What would they say? And you will be, that's it. You're going to have a little piece of humble pie, and that's totally normal. It's totally part of the process. There's nothing wrong, right, with that. It's just that's normal. So one of the ways that you can then get clear on who is doing what and when they're doing it, one of the other pieces I wanted to talk about was something called the accountability chart. Now, this is not an org chart. If I ask some of you to draw out your organization, chances are you might have some weird matrix thing and you've got this and random people here and random people there. What I love is that with the accountability chart, we don't have a title and we don't have a position. We have to first remove ourselves from the business and look at it like we are a board of directors. And so this is not an org chart because org chart takes into consideration titles and egos and all sorts of things. This is really about who is accountable for what. And it lays out this beautiful map for your organization of who is doing what, and it brings further clarity. So I'm going to show you very quickly, and it's 12:47, so I'm going to move fairly quickly through this just to show you what it looks like when you build it. But again, who is accountable for what? So when you're building it, you're going to step back and, it's done with, if you have a leadership team, it might be you. If you're a dentist, it might be you and your office manager talking about it, right, in a solo practice. But when you build an accountability chart, you're going to start with what are the major functions in our business, right? What are the major pieces that we have? Then what might be, if somebody's responsible for that portion of the business, what might be the 3 to 5 high-level responsibilities of that function? This is not drawing out a list of 50 tasks. You really want to start moving to outcome-based, impact-based responsibilities. And then you might list off some success indicators. Only then do you have this beautiful thing written out, do you start to add people to it. And you have to ask yourself, is this person a core value fit, right? Once you've got those things figured out, and do they actually belong in the seat? Do they get it? Do the neurons fire and function? Do they understand what this means? Do they want this job? Because you can't pay, incentivize, or force people to want it. They have to wake up wanting to come in and wanting to be a dental assistant or front office person or an office manager. And do they have the capacity, meaning the emotional, physical, intellectual capacity? Capacity can be trained, and you have to, but we also have to decide, sometimes we have time and the ability to train, and sometimes we don't, and we have to buy up that talent. So you might have an organization where you have some empty seats, and you have to figure out who's going to manage it until you get to the point that you have somebody. Now, it's all about the greater good for the organization. So the mistake, and Eric, you talked about this forever, is people will make seats for the people who have been with them and are loyal to them, but they're probably not the right people. So then they end up continuing to be frustrated and things aren't done and it's just not working well. And there becomes all of this just like undertow of difficulty. But when we're really clear that I'm sorry, like, you're the right person, but not in that seat. You might need to be in a different seat. how beneficial that is and how freeing that is. And that's where you're going to start to really get your business moving. So Eric, before, I know you have lots of amazing comments, I'm going to walk through super quick what this might look like. So this is how you might start to build out an accountability chart. So this is, I've done this lots of times. So it's, you know, you might have these different functions in your group. Now, if you're maybe a smaller practice, this is probably really overwhelming. If you are a large practice or have multi-locations or you're a group, you're probably going to have somebody who's really overseeing like revenue cycle management and marketing. But in many offices, it may be that you have the manager sits here and they sit in additional seats. One rule that you have to understand is you can have one person in 2 seats or 3 seats or whatever, but you cannot have 2 people in 1 seat. And there, you know, Eric has a really interesting story about that and how him and his partner had to figure out who's going to sit in the visionary seat. But first, you look at functions, right? And you spell that out. For smaller offices, it may just be front office, hygiene, dentist, you know, insurance, something like that. Then you might build out the high-level responsibilities. Now, what I have here is really overwhelming. This is meant, when I use this, it's just idea creation, and you would pick 3 to 5. That's it, 3 to 5. And then you might choose what metrics also belong to that seat. So if you can imagine the clarity that you provide as you build this out for your entire organization, if I'm a new person and you sit down with me, one, you're walking me through this, you know, vision traction organizer, this 1-page business plan. You're showing me where I sit and where I belong on this accountability chart, so I know who I work with, what meetings I'm going to, who I'm responsible for, you know, who I report to. But you're showing me these are the 3 to 5 things that you have to nail and you have to be really good at. So hygienist, you know what? You need to be amazing at patient retention, at being a treatment advocate, at doing your, you know, amazing hygiene services and being a support to the team. Then this is how we're going to measure success, and come back tomorrow when I'm going to talk about how to build a data-driven practice and what key performance indicators might look like by position. But imagine handing that to your team member, the level of accountability, the level of clarity that happens when you provide this. Eric?
You know, Josie, the reality of this is that one of the things you and I both experience in practices is that traditionally we all suck with accountability. Like, let's just be honest about it. And the accountability is really that place or that feeling that we have sometimes like, if I want something done, I have to do it myself. What that functionally means is that we haven't empowered our teams to really be able to follow through. It's like having a team we can't pass the ball to, right? And that's the reality of what happens when we don't have this system operating the right way. And one of the other rules that we live by, Josie, was that if more than one person is accountable for something, nobody's accountable. And so by having a system where I only have to look to one individual for whatever the areas are, the outcomes are that I need, it really clarifies our communication as leaders, and it clarifies the responsibilities for employees. And when you have clear responsibilities and you know as a team member what the most important things are for you to do on a daily basis, your life gets to be really freaking cool and really productive and really fun. And so hopefully that gives a little bit of a sense of the magic when you approach this as accountability chart and not the traditional org chart of like who's the boss, who's daddy, who tells who what to do, who fires, whatever. That's lame and not cool. Accountability charts are magic and powerful.
Like unicorns,
like
absolutely.
Unicorns.
Plus it provides this just clarity for team members where they see it like a network of who I need to go to for what, which is nice. You know, the other thing that is worth talking about is that, you know, we talked about it in our new normal stuff is no matter the business, whether it was a dental office or any other type of business, we had some excessive spending probably pre-COVID, right? Whether it was because we had poor processes or, you know, we had a hard time managing people, we had extra team members. I know that many people are trying to figure out how can I run a leaner team, because if I don't, I can't afford to keep my business open. And we know these are the most difficult decisions that people are faced with. And I don't want to sound like I am not for everybody getting their job back, because I am. But I also know, having to sit in that COO seat, that sometimes you have to make really hard decisions to protect your business. And so being able to build something like an accountability chart where you have clarity who is doing what will be one of the best ways for you to figure out how to come back with a lean team and be able to accomplish more. One of the things that EOS Worldwide, this really interesting blog post came out right in March, was this idea of a reverse accountability chart, where if you had to cut back expenses and you had to cut back people, how could you pull that back and look at those things? And so this is, just one way to be very structured about making those decisions, because they're really emotional and they're really tough. But if you have some type of process or structure, you can sleep a little better at night, having to figure out how to make those decisions.
Amen, Josie. And that's what we all functionally want at the end of the day, is we want practices that can operate more like they're on cruise control, right? And like, that's the reality of what it really means to not have to be able to sleep great at night without worry, to know that things are handled, and to know that you're making progress on whatever targets you've set out there, that you have a team that's healthy and happy. Functionally, for us, that's what the entrepreneurial operating system has provided in so many different ways.
And the last tool that I want to talk about, so we talked a little bit about vision, we talked about accountability chart. The last one is something called a scorecard. So, you've probably heard the phrase, what gets measured gets managed, and that is absolutely appropriate. I'm going to go into this more tomorrow, but it's also that what gets measured and gets reported back grows exponentially. So, a lot of people might get themselves lost in data and analytics, and they're tracking tons of things, but the point of the scorecard is really, really prioritizing 5 to 15 of the most important metrics representing the pulse of the business. So although we had 7 locations, 200 employees, and we were managing, $40 million of revenue in a year, we tracked 7 numbers every week. And we talked about those things every single week in our leadership team meeting, and we were diligent about that. And what was amazing is it allows us to predict, it allows us to be more adaptable, it allows us to identify where we had, holes in the process. So, my favorite example of utilizing the scorecard was, one of the numbers that we tracked was scheduled production. And then we also tracked just production. So our meetings were on Tuesdays. And so we would look at how much dentistry do we already have scheduled in this week? And then what does it look like after we complete it? Because we were, had these big, beautiful practices that we built from the ground up. Rolling that treatment over and adding treatment every day was critical to our growth, and is really why we were able to grow so fast. But our goal was, at this point, it was $470,000 a week was our scheduled goal. But we sat down, and we had several weeks that were green, and so we were sitting pretty comfy. We come in, and our scheduled goal was off. It was like 370. It was $100,000 short, and it's Tuesday. So what happened? Oh my gosh, guys, it's spring break. We didn't plan for spring break. What are we going to do? So we utilized the problem-solving process that you learn, how to implement inside these meetings. And we came up with, we're going to do this thing called a power hour. And we're going to buy everybody lunch, and everybody's going to be on the phone making dental intel follow-up calls. And we're going to, work with the treatment coordinators, and we're going to talk to the doc. Like, we had this whole plan. We rolled it out on Wednesday. We bought the team lunch Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we were just hoping and praying that we would get closer to that ultimate goal. Because if you understand, at that point in the business, having a week that low in production, we knew 4 to 6 weeks later, our collections were going to be low. If that was a payroll week, if that was when we had some big vendor bills or whatever, like cash is king, and we know what it was like trying to manage all of that. So we all had to fight really hard. We came back that Monday, and we were just hoping to get closer to what our goal was. We added $133,000 worth of production within those 3 days. But what we recognized, because we had the scorecard, is 2 weeks later, we then had two of the very best weeks that we had. So then we asked ourselves, what happened? Well, we realized dental intel calls were super important to our business, and we needed to have a better process for how we planned for things like spring break or holidays. So we went through and decided 4 weeks before we have a short week, we're going to put it on the leadership team calendar and we're going to plan for it. So that May, this happened in March, that May we started planning for July, and July had typically always been the worst month in the history, of the company history. That July, because we changed our process, was the most profitable month we'd had in the history of the company. So it was, again, using the scorecard, coming back to it weekly, identifying what we see happens, and making those things a process that we then follow so that we don't find ourselves having to scramble.
Yeah, what you're really saying, Josey, is two things. Number one, it's amazing how with all the numbers and data points that we can build into our practices, and us as nerds, which we all are, will look at all of them. What we can really do is just boil it down to a few really important numbers, and that when you use the tools that are available to you in EOS to isolate the value of those specific numbers and to create processes and otherwise, like you can take things like your worst historical traditional months and turn them into things that are like your best. And that's the power and the real yield for all of us, is that we're able to deliver the gift that we've been given, and that's the gift of dentistry that we can share with the world. And how amazing is it that these tools, as they work together, what they really do is they increase your ability to deliver your gifts to the world. That's a good thing.
Well, I know, so it's 1:02. We probably cut everybody off for Q&A, but we have a few minutes. But I just want to say, before everybody jumps off here, please check out the newnormaldds.com. There's free course, free workbook, whatever, 10 videos of getting to hear Eric and I talk about things that are going on have gone on in our world. You can find us in Facebook. Hygienist in Heels is my social media. You can find New Normal Dentistry. And then if you have any questions at dsocoach.com. So Kendall, if you're still there, I'll turn it over to you for Q&A. Eric, thank you for this. This has been fun.
The pleasure was most definitely mine, Josey.
And yes, I am still here. So Adobe came through, held us all together. Thank you, thank you. That was so great. No surprise, though. You guys are just absolute dynamite. So yes, I would like to take a few minutes. People can log off if they need to, but we do have some questions coming in, so I'd love to take a few minutes to answer some questions if you guys don't mind. And then I'm sure Dr. Cooch will want to jump in here as well, and we'll have some things to add. The first question that I'd love to ask, and I think this comes up a lot with practices, especially if you're a single or double doc practice, do you find hiring a COO or even office manager, someone else besides the dentist, is beneficial to lead the people in the team?
You want to go first, Eric?
Sure. We do run into that question an awful lot. And Kendall, the real answer really comes down to those responsibilities inside the accountability chart. So to ask the question of number one, what are the actual skills and capabilities of the other dentists, and the other team members that are there? Because functionally, we have this list of things that, and I was no different. As a leader, I had a list of things that I needed to do on a weekly basis, right? And there's this list of things that I was actually good at doing. And then there's the list of things that have to get done that I can't do or that I may not be good at doing. And so isolating the tasks out first can really help to determine whether you need a specific individual, or sometimes what we would even find, Kendall, was that there were already people in our teams in different places that had skill sets to manage some of those parts. That helps us to operate in more of a lean manner. And EOS helped us to uncover people that maybe had potential or capabilities for leadership inside our companies that we wouldn't have considered otherwise. Like maybe just team members that were relatively new assistants actually had a forte for managing and leading other team members, and we watched them grow into roles because of it. So do you have to have a COO or an operations manager or somebody to handle that stuff? You know, it really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish and what your business and your existing set of tools look like. But until you have a language and a way to really look at everything that's existing in there, I can't really answer that question, because Josey and I have both worked with companies that have effectively operated without somebody in that role, and then companies that have effectively operated with people in that spot. So that'd be my 10
Yeah,
cents. Joe, what do you think?
it has to be definitely, looking at where you are with your business. But, I'm all about delegation, and I'm all about getting the right people in the right seats. And so if you're a dentist and you don't love managing people, and you don't love having to have some of those tough conversations or minding all the little details, absolutely get somebody. I think where sometimes people struggle, and it's not fair to the office manager and it's not fair to the dentist a lot of times, is we believe that, like, when you're looking for experience, they're just thinking about, dentistry, right? Or, EagleSoft, or, whatever. And to manage people is a totally different set of skills than what it took to be a great dental assistant or a great front office person. That's not to say they don't have those things, but, be mindful of who you're putting in that office manager seat, that managing people and managing process is a very different skill set. So give them the training and the tools and the resources that they need if you've elevated them up. And if not, some people have been pretty successful finding, if it's other industries, able to bring somebody in. But again, it really depends on what your business needs. But the manager is critical to team engagement. So if you're don't want to manage people, then you absolutely should have somebody in there helping you manage people and watch the metrics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to do it.
And that's great. And I think I saw Lance. Hi, Lance. Thanks for chiming in. I saw his comment, and I think, to both of your points, that if you have someone who really loves managing people, and that can allow the dentist to be really focused on their dental care and the dentistry that they're doing with their patients. So that might, be the perfect combination for that practice, but every practice is different. Josey, there was a question. What were the books that you mentioned in the beginning to read more about EOS? There were some people wondering about that.
So there's a whole library of books. One that people know is Traction. So there's Traction and Get a Grip that will tell you the overview, Gino Wickman, of the entire program. Get a Grip is written more in like a story format, so it's easy to get through. Traction is kind of like your how-to, so it's kind of dry to just read cover to cover, but really helpful. But they have one that's called Rocket Fuel that actually is great for those who are visionaries and what they need in a counterpart and an integrator. If you're running on EOS, they have something called What the Heck is EOS? And that's written for team members. So there's a whole lot, but Traction or Get a Grip is where I would start. There was
excellent, and
definitely, and I would say that one or the other just appeals based on the style of book that you enjoy reading. I found Traction to be like supremely engaging. Other people like these allegorical stories, like, hey, here's a story about how this happened in somebody's life, which is more of what Get a Grip is.
Absolutely.
That's great. And on that note, oh, sorry, go ahead, Josey.
No, it's okay. Go for it.
Okay. I was going to ask, you mentioned a book that was great for the team. So somebody asked, if I have a team that's pushing back on new ideas, what is your recommendation to help open their minds to something like EOS, even just opening that conversation initially for the first time?
So I would say one of the books you might want to pick up first is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And so understanding that team health pyramid is going to be critical. So, you know, whenever you implement any type of change, you're going to get resistance. That is not you, that is not them, that is human nature. It is just part of it. So understanding change management, right, and what that means is important. But people, when they hear about change, we kind of hold on to what we've done in the past, even if it hasn't served us well. So that's where things like having a really, really clear vision and core values, it allows you to, rather than feeling like you're on opposite sides of the table, you can come alongside that team member and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to accomplish together. This is what I want to be a part of. Do you want to be a part of that? Okay, great, because the way that we've been coming at this has not been working well, or I think it can be better, but I need your help. You know, please help me because I want to be a better leader. I want us to operate more efficiently. It's all about helping people understand why you're doing it and giving them that space to ask questions. If you have this like command and control type environment, then people are scared and they're going to resist that. But again, if it's, you can be open and honest and vulnerable as a leader and say, hey, you know what, I kind of struggle with a few things and I'm looking for a system so that I'm communicating better, so I'm focusing on the right things, and so I can be a better leader and we can be a better team. Would you please be willing to give this a try for me? Let's give it a try and see how it works. And I think managing it that way, rather than just forcing it at people, you have to give them the opportunity to ask questions and work through it themselves. Eric?
Yeah, everybody innately wants to resist change because we've all been burned by change, right? Change is hard. Like and yet at the same time to ask a different question, do you want things to be better and easier or more productive in your life? To which almost all people would say yes. So it's actually not the change that we're afraid of. It's negative change, or it's the pressure or the issues that come up when we go through it. And so, you know, the majority of the time, creating team health and really getting alignment around a vision helps us to have that language and that alignment to be able to introduce change and have it be positive and efficacious. At the same time, I will add that what we also discovered is that sometimes an unwillingness to change actually just meant that we had people on our team that really weren't a fit. And what we found is that sometimes just one or two very resistant individuals that honestly didn't own our values of who we were muddying the water for everybody by creating a greater wall of resistance to what needed to happen. So having this systematic approach and these tools really helps you isolate, is it this or is it that, or is it perhaps both?
Great question.
Excellent. Well, we're at 12:13 Pacific time, but Dr. Cooch, are you on the line with us still? Did you have anything that you wanted to add in here?
Yeah, I just want to compliment both of you guys. That was awesome. And I think that it really strikes a chord from the fact that, you know, I think we as clinicians get focused on clinical procedures, right? And we, as dentists, we focus on being better at what we do clinically and thinking that that's the key to our success. And it's really important because that's who we are and that's what we're trying to do and deliver to people. But at the same time, this whole aspect of running a business and all of that, the systems and the management and all of that you guys presented today, if you want to have a really well-run, successful business that you're going to get the life that you want from it, you can't have it without that. And so I really just want to thank you guys for sharing that with us today because it's so important for our profession. I don't know why our profession for so long has ignored this entire topic, right? Because you come out of hygiene school or dental school and you're going into a small business, and they should be preparing us as small business owners, and we get literally nothing. You know, it's like you get thrown out that and you have to either know it intuitively, you learn it, or you learn it in the school of hard knocks, or you just struggle for a career, right? So you guys are a blessing to the profession, and I want to thank you for sharing that today.
It's very
Thank
kind
you
of you,
so
Kim.
much.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay,
We'll see you guys.
so
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes,
Josey will be on with us tomorrow. She did a great job of giving a little bit of insight into what she was going to be talking about. If you guys have questions that didn't get answered, please check out the resources Josey and Dr. Roman posted on the slide, or you're welcome again to email them directly. Don't miss our last course tomorrow. Josey is going to be closing us out in the CONNEXT conference, and we are very excited. So you're going to get a double dose of her. So last but not least, thank you again, Dr. Roman. Thank you, Josey. We just love you guys. And to all of our attendees for joining us on this last week. Tomorrow will be bittersweet as we close out our conference, but we're going to do it with a bang. So thank you all. We've appreciated your support, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Kendall. We love you as well. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.